We all want to believe that our parents did the best they could. And maybe they did. Maybe they truly gave everything they had, with the tools and understanding available to them at the time. But what happens when the choices they made, the words they said, or the ones they never dared to speak, the gestures they expressed, or their lack of presence altogether, continue to shape and even haunt our adult lives? What happens when we look back and begin to realize that the weight of their influence is still with us, affecting how we love, how we trust, and most of all, how we treat ourselves? There is a kind of silent pain that very few people are willing to acknowledge. It's the pain of having been hurt by those who were supposed to protect us. This pain is hard to admit, let alone confront, because it hides behind layers of excuses and cultural justifications. We hear phrases like, "That's just how things were back then," or "They had a tough life," or "They didn't know any better." And while these statements may carry some truth, they don't erase the emotional wounds left behind. The hurt remains, quietly influencing how we connect with others, how we set boundaries, and how we perceive our own worth. Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in psychology, dedicated a significant part of his work to understanding how our childhood shapes the human psyche. He believed that the experiences we have during our formative years leave a permanent imprint on our unconscious mind. According to Jung, what we do not make conscious will continue to direct our lives from the shadows, and we will call it fate. Many of these unconscious forces, he argued, stem from the relationship we had, or didn't have, with our parents. Maybe you grew up with a father who was emotionally distant, someone who was physically there, but never truly present. And now, as an adult, you find it incredibly difficult to open up emotionally or to believe that people won't abandon you. Or perhaps your mother was overly critical, and now you live with an inner voice that constantly whispers, "You're not enough." Maybe you learned at a very young age to be a people pleaser, to suppress your own emotions, your desires, your needs, because every time you dared to express them, you were met with disapproval, silence, or even punishment. These wounds don't disappear simply because we age. They don't vanish just because we've learned to function in the adult world. They remain buried deep within us, hidden in the shadow parts of our psyche, quietly influencing our emotions, our choices, our relationships. That's why, no matter how much we try to move forward, we often find ourselves trapped in repetitive cycles, living out the same pain in different scenarios over and over again. It can feel like life is pushing us into an endless loop of emotional déjà vu. But here's something crucial to understand. Healing doesn't begin by pointing fingers or assigning blame. Healing begins with awareness. We cannot change the past, but we can change how we relate to it. Forgiving our parents does not mean excusing their behavior or diminishing the pain we endured. It means releasing the burden we continue to carry. It means breaking the cycle so that it doesn't continue with us, so we don't unconsciously pass it down to our partners, to our children, or even to ourselves. So, how do we begin this process? How do we truly forgive and heal? First, we must recognize the root of the pain. We must come to terms with the fact that our childhood experiences have deeply shaped our adult identity. Only when we fully acknowledge how those early experiences molded us can we begin to untangle the emotional patterns that are no longer serving us. Our childhood doesn't just disappear because we grow up. It remains alive within us, echoing in our thoughts, reflected in our relationships, hidden in our fears, and repeated in our behavior. It is in childhood where the first seeds of our beliefs were planted. Beliefs about love, trust, safety, and our own self-worth. If those seeds were planted in soil, filled with neglect, fear, criticism, or abandonment, then their roots still run deep into our adult lives, even if we don't see them clearly. Jung explained that the unresolved issues of our childhood continue to manifest unconsciously throughout our adult lives. This means that the emotional atmosphere we grew up in, the praise we did or didn't receive, the love we had to earn or were denied, the boundaries that were either too rigid or non-existent, becomes the blueprint for how we experience life as adults. We may not remember every moment of our early years, but our current emotions, reactions, and coping mechanisms are living reflections of what we absorbed back then. Think about this. A child who felt that they had to earn their parents' love by getting perfect grades, being obedient, never expressing anger or sadness, will likely grow up into an adult who constantly seeks validation, someone who fears rejection, who tries too hard to be liked, who believes deep down that their value lies in what they do, not who they are. Not because they consciously chose this way of being, but because their unconscious mind learned that this is how love works. Or consider a child who grew up in a home filled with judgment and criticism, where mistakes were met with shame instead of understanding. That child might become an adult who is terrified of failure, who sets impossibly high standards for themselves, who hears a relentless inner critic saying, "You're not good enough," every time they try something new. What began as a childhood defense mechanism becomes a life pattern, not because we want to suffer, but because the unconscious always seeks what's familiar, even if that familiarity brings pain. This is not about blaming our parents for every hardship we face. They too were shaped by their own stories, their own wounds, their own limited understanding of love. But it is about facing the truth. Our early experiences have impacted us more than we often realize, and until we bring that truth into the light, we will continue to relive the same emotional patterns again and again. So how do we recognize whether these childhood wounds are still alive within us? This is where the true journey inward begins, because these wounds, though invisible, are not silent. They speak through our behaviors, our relationships, our fears, and our anxieties. They show up in our struggles to trust, to express ourselves, to feel worthy. They appear in our perfectionism, our fear of rejection, our tendency to sabotage happiness the moment it feels real. Time alone doesn't heal these wounds. Denying them doesn't make them go away. Only by looking inward with honesty and compassion can we begin to understand where our pain comes from and how to begin healing it. This path isn't easy. It requires us to revisit the past, to feel things we've spent years avoiding, to unlearn what was never true. But in doing so, we begin to reclaim our power. We stop being controlled by old programs and begin to write a new story, one that is conscious, free, and rooted in self-awareness. Carl Jung taught us that the unconscious does not remain in the darkness forever. Sooner or later, it seeks to express itself, and if we don't face it consciously, it will find its way to the surface, through our emotions, our life patterns, and even in our dreams. The unconscious is not silent. It waits for the moment to be seen, to be heard, and if we keep ignoring it, it will speak louder each time, through confusion, emotional chaos, and repeated suffering. One of the first signs of an unresolved wound is the presence of triggering emotions. Think about it. Have you ever found yourself reacting strongly, maybe even explosively, to something that, on the surface, seemed minor or insignificant. Chances are, you weren't just reacting to what was happening in the present. You were responding to something much older, something hidden deep within you. For instance, if someone offers you a simple critique and you immediately feel anger, sadness, or a desperate urge to defend yourself, it may not be about what they said at all. It may be because during your childhood, you were taught, either through words or actions, that love and acceptance were conditional, that your worth depended on your performance. So now, every time you face criticism, your unconscious mind perceives it as a threat to your self-worth. It triggers the same insecurity you felt when you were a child, vulnerable and desperate to be seen as enough. Another powerful sign of unhealed wounds is the repetition of life patterns. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This means that if we do not heal what hurt us, we will continue to live it over and over again. It will return in different forms, different people, different places, but the pain will be the same. People who grew up with a deep fear of abandonment, for example, often find themselves in relationships where they constantly feel the need to prove they are lovable. They may overextend themselves, tolerate emotional neglect, or fall in love with people who are distant and unavailable, recreating, without realizing it, the emotional vacuum of their childhood. Others may find themselves sabotaging their own success because deep down they believe they don't deserve happiness, that joy and fulfillment are not meant for them. But there is an even deeper way that our unconscious communicates with us, through dreams. Jung believed dreams are symbolic messages from the unconscious. They are like letters from our inner world, revealing what our conscious mind refuses to see. A dream where you're being chased, for example, may symbolize a repressed emotion or unresolved fear that you're trying to avoid. Dreaming of a collapsing or abandoned house might represent a part of your psyche that feels neglected or broken, an inner structure that is falling apart and needs rebuilding. Even the appearance of authority figures in dreams can signal unresolved emotions related to your relationship with your parents. If you're someone who constantly seeks the approval of others, it could mean that, as a child, you never felt truly accepted by your parents. If you feel a compulsive need to control every aspect of your life, perhaps you grew up in an environment filled with chaos, and your nervous system learned to equate safety with control. Everything we do in the present has roots in our past. Every reaction, every fear, every compulsive behavior is tied to a moment, often long forgotten, that shaped how we see the world. But recognizing the wound is only the beginning. Healing is far more complex. There is something that makes this process even more difficult: the shadow. The shadow is the hidden side of our psyche, the part of ourselves we deny, reject, or simply don't want to see. Yet, it still affects us, silently but powerfully. When we think of our parents, we often fall into extremes. We either idealize them, convincing ourselves that they did the best they could, or we demonize them, blaming them entirely for our suffering. But the truth lies somewhere in between. Our parents were human beings, flawed, wounded, and shaped by their own unresolved pain. They too had shadows. They too carried fears that governed their behavior. And without knowing it, many of those shadows were passed down to us, not genetically, but emotionally and behaviorally. We inherit not only eye color or personality traits, but emotional patterns. We inherit silence, shame, emotional coldness, anxiety, overprotection, and the inability to express love freely. The things they could not heal often become the wounds we are left to confront. And unless we choose to face them, to look into the shadow and bring light to what has been hidden, we will continue to repeat the cycle. We will keep wondering why life feels heavy, why our relationships hurt, and why peace seems so distant. Carl Jung defined the shadow as the hidden side of our psyche, those parts of ourselves that we have repressed because we've learned to see them as unacceptable, shameful, or too painful to acknowledge. These are fragments of our personality that we've buried deep in the unconscious, often because, at some point in our lives, someone, perhaps a parent, a teacher, or society itself, told us that these traits were wrong or undesirable. But what we suppress does not vanish. It lingers in the shadows, operating silently, subtly shaping our choices, our relationships, and even our very identity. This same dynamic often manifests in how we perceive our parents. Many of us grow up denying their flaws, not because we don't see them, but because recognizing them hurts. Admitting that our parents made mistakes would mean accepting that the very people who were supposed to love and protect us may have also hurt or failed us. And that's an excruciating truth to face. In some cases, we swing to the opposite extreme, demonizing our parents, turning them into villains in our internal narrative, and clinging to resentment as a form of emotional armor. But here's the paradox. Even when we resent them, we remain emotionally tied to them through that very resentment. We're still bound to them, still haunted by their influence, still reacting to wounds left unhealed. Yet the family shadow goes beyond how we see our parents. It's also embedded in the patterns and behaviors we've unconsciously inherited. Perhaps we were raised by an emotionally distant father, and we've spent our lives rejecting that coldness, vowing to be different. But if we're brutally honest, how often do we withhold our emotions? How many times have we created distance in our relationships without realizing it? The truth is, what we most resent in our parents often mirrors what we've internalized in ourselves. It's easier to see their mistakes than to confront the ways we've replicated them. It's simpler to say, "My mother didn't know how to love," than to ask ourselves, in what ways do I also struggle to express love? It's easier to blame our father for being overly critical than to acknowledge how harsh we've become with ourselves or with others. The shadow isn't just what we hate about our parents. It's also what we unknowingly carry forward, what we repeat, what we become. And until we bring these unconscious truths into the light, we remain trapped in cycles of repetition, living out the same pain, making the same choices, becoming the very people we swore we'd never be. When we're not aware of our shadow, we project it onto others. This is where the psychological mechanism of projection comes into play. One of the most subtle yet powerful ways the unconscious forces us to face what we don't want to see. Carl Jung explained that we project onto others the parts of ourselves we cannot accept. In other words, what we refuse to acknowledge within, we begin to see outside of us, in the behaviors of others, in our partners, our friends, our children. Projection is the unconscious mind's defense. It shields us from the pain of self-confrontation by making the problem appear external. But this also keeps us stuck. When we don't make our wounds conscious, we are doomed to repeat them, often without even realizing it. Consider this. If we were raised by excessively demanding parents, we might grow into adults who push ourselves relentlessly, never feeling good enough, never allowing ourselves rest. Or we might become critical of others, echoing the harsh voices from our past. If we grew up in an environment where love was inconsistent, where one day we felt embraced and the next ignored, we may now find ourselves attracted to chaotic relationships, drawn to emotional highs and lows that feel disturbingly familiar. We may complain about feeling unloved or abandoned, unaware that we are choosing relationships that replicate the emotional instability we once knew. This is no coincidence. The unconscious seeks what is familiar, even if it hurts. There is a powerful exercise worth trying. Think about the traits in your parents that bothered you the most. Were they authoritarian, emotionally unavailable, cold, or dismissive? Now ask yourself with raw honesty, in what ways have I adopted those same behaviors? Perhaps not in obvious ways, but in small habits, in how you speak to yourself, in how you treat others. What we reject in our parents often becomes what we unknowingly carry within. And what's most ironic is that many of us are unconsciously drawn to people who resemble our parents, hoping deep down to rewrite the story, to heal the original wound by reliving it in a different way. But healing doesn't come from repeating the pattern. It comes from breaking it. Recognizing these patterns is only the first step. True healing requires something deeper, a conscious journey toward what Jung called individuation. This is the process through which we integrate all parts of our psyche and become whole. It's how we move beyond the injuries and limitations of our past and step into the person we were always meant to be. Healing does not mean forgetting what happened. It doesn't mean justifying the pain or pretending everything was okay. Healing means we no longer allow our history to control us. It means reclaiming our power, our agency, our identity. Individuation, according to Jung, is about becoming your most authentic self. It's not about being perfect. It's about being whole. But this journey is not automatic. It requires deep, conscious work. We must be willing to face what we've spent years avoiding. We must look within and confront the inner child still carrying wounds that were never validated, never soothed. There are 4 essential steps on this path. Acknowledge the wound without victimhood. We cannot heal what we don't recognize. This means admitting that our childhood left marks, some subtle, some deep. It's not about blaming our parents forever or staying trapped in anger. It's about giving our pain a name. But the wound should not define us. We are not just the wounded child. We are much more than our suffering. Embrace the shadow without fear. What we reject in ourselves often ends up controlling us. Jung believed that unless we confront our shadow, we will keep projecting it onto the world. That means accepting that, in many ways, we have repeated what once hurt us. Maybe we vowed not to become like our parents, but we've found ourselves in eerily similar patterns. The key is not self-punishment. It's awareness and the conscious choice to change course. Free ourselves from projection and see our parents with clarity. Real healing happens when we stop viewing our parents through the eyes of the wounded child. Neither idealize them nor vilify them. Understand them. They too were shaped by their own pain and limitations. This doesn't excuse their actions, but it does humanize them. True freedom begins when we stop expecting them to be different and instead give ourselves the love and validation we once sought from them. Consciously decide who we want to be. This is the most crucial step. We cannot change our childhood, but we can choose how we respond to it. Will we continue living out unconscious patterns, or will we reclaim authorship over our story? Individuation is about becoming the person we choose to be, not the person our wounds created. Many people have turned their pain into power. Those who suffered abandonment have learned to support themselves with love. Those who feared rejection discovered that their worth is not up for negotiation. Those who felt they were never enough have realized that the only approval they need is their own. And yet, there remains one final profound step in this process, the most difficult, but also the most transformative: forgiveness. Not as a favor to our parents, not because they deserve it, but as a gift to ourselves. Forgiveness is not about forgetting or minimizing the pain. It is not about saying, "It wasn't that bad." Forgiveness, in its purest form, is a form of personal liberation. It is the moment we stop carrying the weight of the past, the moment we set ourselves free. Carl Jung spoke of the process of integration, a deep inner journey that invites us to see our personal history with unflinching clarity, stripped of both victimhood and denial. It's not about painting ourselves as helpless or pretending nothing happened. Instead, it's about facing the truth as it is. In this process, we stop idealizing our parents as flawless heroes or condemning them as ruthless villains. We begin to see them for what they truly are: human beings, humans with their own wounds, their own shadows, their own emotional limitations. So often, we carry a silent resentment we don't even realize is hurting us. It festers quietly, shaping our thoughts and relationships. We hold on to the idea that our parents should have been different, that they should have known better, should have done more, should have loved more consciously. And while that feeling is deeply valid, born from very real emotional needs, the truth remains: the past cannot be rewritten. Waiting for emotional justice, waiting for the apology that may never come, only extends our suffering and delays our healing. True forgiveness is not about convincing ourselves that the pain inflicted upon us was somehow okay. It's not about erasing what happened. Forgiveness begins when we decide we no longer want that pain to shape our lives. It happens when we refuse to let the past keep dictating our present. A person with an emotionally absent father, for example, may spend a lifetime consumed by resentment, feeling abandoned, and constantly asking why they were never loved the way they needed. But that person also has the power to pause, to reflect, and to ask themselves a different question. Who was my father before he became my father? What story shaped him? What emotional wounds did he carry long before I ever entered the picture? Jung reminded us of a powerful truth. What we fail to integrate will continue to repeat itself. If we remain shackled to anger and blame, it is likely that the same unresolved pain will continue showing up in our relationships and patterns. If we are constantly waiting for our parents to acknowledge the damage they caused, we are still giving them control over our emotions and our healing. Taking back that power means choosing to look inward instead. There is a powerful practice that can help us with this process. It begins with writing a letter, raw, honest, uncensored. Say everything you've ever wanted to say. Speak from your pain, from your anger, from your sadness. Don't hold anything back. Then, take a second sheet of paper and write a response as if you were your parent, not to excuse their actions, but to see their story from a new perspective. Try to understand what they might have felt, what they might have gone through, what emotional burdens they carried. This exercise is not about justifying what they did. It's about releasing the emotional weight we've been holding for so long. It's about realizing that healing is a journey we must choose to walk ourselves. At the end of the day, the responsibility for our healing does not belong to anyone else. It belongs to us. And there is one final lesson that has the power to transform your life forever. How to turn your pain into wisdom. Because true transformation is not just about letting go of the past. It's about using that past to create a more conscious and authentic life. You cannot change what happened, but you can choose what you will do with it. Childhood leaves marks. Some are visible. Others are hidden deep within the unconscious. We spend years trying to make sense of it all, trying to understand why our parents were the way they were, why they hurt us, why they never gave us what we so desperately needed. But there comes a point in every journey when a choice must be made. Will we continue to be prisoners of our story, or will we choose to transform the pain into wisdom? Carl Jung taught us that true growth occurs when we stop running from our shadow and begin to embrace it. The same principle applies to our past. It's not about ignoring what happened. It's not about staying stuck in resentment. It's about looking at our history with new eyes. It's about turning every scar into fuel for transformation. That childhood wound, the one that left you feeling abandoned, unworthy, unseen, can become the very force that helps you grow. If you were never emotionally supported, you can learn to be the one who holds yourself with tenderness. If you were told you were not enough, you can now become the one who affirms your worth without waiting for anyone else's validation. If you grew up in an emotionally cold environment, you have the power to break that cycle and become someone who loves with presence and awareness. Nothing you experienced was in vain. Every moment, every tear, every disappointment carries within it the potential to become a source of strength and understanding. What hurt you does not have to define you, but what you do with that pain, how you choose to carry it forward, that can define everything. And now, the question remains, what will you do with what you've just uncovered? If this message resonated with you, it's not by accident. Something inside you is ready to heal, ready to evolve. Maybe you can't change the past, but you can change your relationship with it. And in that choice, in that shift, lies the real freedom. If this message resonated with you and you believe someone else needs to hear it too, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video, and help us reach more people who are ready to heal, grow, and reclaim their lives. Remember, your past does not define you. Your choices do. You have the power to turn your pain into purpose, your wounds into wisdom, and your story into a source of light for others. Keep going. You're not alone, and your healing journey has already begun.
Jung left us an invaluable legacy by showing us how to explore the deepest corners of our minds to overcome life's most complex challenges. One of the greatest emotional struggles we face is how to let go of someone who, despite having left our lives, continues to occupy a constant space in our minds. How can we release someone who seems to have become a persistent shadow in our consciousness? This is a deeply human question, and Jung offers us key insights to understand and heal. The reason why someone remains in your mind is not necessarily due to love or attachment, but because that person has become a symbol of something much deeper. Perhaps they represent an unhealed wound, a fear, an insecurity, or even a part of yourself that you have repressed. According to Jung, the unconscious uses symbols to communicate with us. The people we struggle to let go of are, in reality, mirrors reflecting unresolved aspects of our psyche. When you think about that person, what emotions arise? Is it sadness, anger, nostalgia, or a mixture of everything? These emotions are messages from your unconscious. It's not just about the other person, but about what they trigger within you. Instead of trying to suppress these feelings, Jung would invite you to explore them. What story is your mind trying to tell you? Ignoring these signals only prolongs suffering, while facing them with honesty can be the first step toward liberation. The process of letting go begins with accepting that this person is not meant to have a permanent place in your life. But accepting this is not an act of resignation. It is an act of profound self-love. Many times, we hold on to someone in our minds because we cling to an idea of what could have been. We torment ourselves with endless what-ifs and create imaginary scenarios that will never materialize. This attachment to the past prevents us from embracing the present and envisioning a different future. Jung teaches us that the unconscious acts as a silent companion on our journey, showing us what we need to confront in order to grow. If that person remains present in your mind, ask yourself, what lesson do I need to learn from this experience? What part of me needs healing or transformation? These are not easy questions to answer, but they are essential for moving forward. We often get trapped in obsessive thought patterns because we resist facing the shadows these people reveal within us. The shadow, as Jung defined it, consists of those parts of our personality that we prefer not to see, the aspect of ourselves that we have repressed because we believe they are unacceptable. But the more we ignore our shadow, the more control it has over our lives. The person occupying your mind may be a constant reminder of a shadow you need to integrate. When you begin working with your shadow, something powerful happens. You stop projecting your fears and insecurities onto others. Instead of blaming that person for how you feel, you start taking responsibility for your own emotions. This is a liberating act because it restores the power you had given away to that relationship. The path to liberation also requires self-compassion. Do not punish yourself for feeling this way. Recognize that you are in a healing process and that every emotion has a purpose. Instead of fighting against your feelings, accept them as a natural part of your human experience. This approach not only alleviates pain, but also opens a door to a deeper understanding of yourself. By accepting and exploring your emotions, you take a fundamental step toward self-knowledge. Carl Jung believed that the path to wholeness is not about eliminating pain, but about integrating it. By accepting pain as a necessary part of your experience, you uncover its purpose. Every emotion has something to teach you, and every person who leaves a mark on your life is a teacher. Even if their lesson is difficult to accept, integrating your shadows not only transforms your relationship with yourself, but also with the world around you. When you stop projecting your wounds onto others, you begin to see people as they truly are, not as a mere reflection of your own fears or desires. This shift in perspective is powerful because it allows you to connect with others from a place of authenticity, rather than from a need for validation or control. It is important to understand that letting go of someone does not mean forgetting what they meant to you. Relationships, even those that come to an end, are part of your story. To deny them would be to deny a part of yourself. However, you can honor those memories without allowing them to define you. Jung would say that the past holds value, not as an anchor that keeps you stuck, but as a beacon that illuminates a path toward your evolution. One of the most transformative tools that Jung left us is the practice of introspection. Dedicate time to sitting in silence with yourself and reflecting on what that person represents in your life. What emotions do they evoke? What recurring patterns do you notice? What aspects of yourself emerge when you think about them? This exercise is not easy, but it will help you understand the roots of your attachment and provide you with clarity to move forward. Liberation is not a linear process. There will be days when you feel like you have moved on, and others when emotions resurface with intensity. This is normal. Jung reminds us that personal growth does not happen instantly, but rather in layers. Each time you confront your emotions, you are healing a deeper part of yourself. Moreover, it is crucial to surround yourself with an environment that supports your healing process. The people with whom you spend your time have a significant impact on your energy and well-being. Jung believed that our relationships are a reflection of our internal state. If you constantly surround yourself with individuals who demotivate you or reinforce negative thoughts, it will be much harder to move forward. Instead, seek connections that inspire you, remind you of your worth, and encourage you to keep growing. The process of letting go also involves redefining your identity. Many times, we tie our sense of self to a relationship or the presence of someone in our lives. We believe that without them, we are incomplete. But Jung teaches us that true wholeness does not come from external sources. It comes from our connection with ourselves. When you reconnect with yourself, you realize that you do not need anyone else to feel complete. Ask yourself, who am I outside of this relationship? What dreams, passions, and talents have I neglected while focusing on this person? Allow yourself to rediscover them. You may find that the version of yourself that emerges after this process is stronger, wiser, and more authentic than ever before. As you reconnect with yourself, you begin to notice a shift in your energy. That emotional burden you were carrying starts to dissipate, and in its place arises a sense of lightness and clarity. This is the power of letting go. It not only frees you from the weight of the past, but also opens you up to new possibilities. Carl Jung once said that life is not about avoiding suffering, but about finding meaning in every experience. And when you find that meaning, something magical happens. You transform your pain into wisdom. In this process, it is essential to cultivate practices that strengthen your internal connection. One powerful tool is writing. Take a moment to put your thoughts on paper. Write without filters, allowing your emotions to flow freely. Ask yourself, what has this relationship taught me about myself? What parts of myself do I want to embrace, and which do I need to heal? This exercise not only provides clarity, but also serves as a channel to release the emotions you've been holding inside. Another powerful practice is visualization. Imagine that you are letting go of this relationship as if it were a rope you've been tightly holding on to. Watch as it drifts away, carrying with it all the pain, attachment, and expectations that have been holding you back. In its place, visualize a radiant light filling that empty space, symbolizing your renewal. These kind of exercises are not just symbolic. They have a real impact on your mind and your energy. It is also essential to be patient with yourself. The path to healing is not linear. There will be days when you feel like you have taken enormous steps forward, and others when it seems like you are moving backward. But remember, every step, even the smallest ones, is part of your progress. Carl Jung believed that the soul has its own rhythm of healing, and forcing the process only creates more resistance. Learning to trust time and your own ability to overcome this challenge is crucial. Once you begin to free yourself from attachment, something truly extraordinary happens. You start seeing life from a completely new perspective. Jung referred to this as a process of individuation, a journey toward becoming who you truly are, free from external influences that distort your essence. This is a profoundly liberating experience because it brings you back to yourself. You realize that you are enough, that you have always been enough, and that you do not need to cling to anyone to feel whole. At this stage, it is common to experience a mix of emotions. On one hand, there is joy and liberation, but on the other, there may be an unsettling sense of emptiness. However, this emptiness is not something to fear. It is something to embrace. It is a fertile space, ready to be filled with new experiences, meaningful connections, and fresh dreams. Jung believed that emptiness is a prelude to creativity. So instead of resisting it, use it as an opportunity to reinvent yourself. One of the greatest gifts this process will give you is the ability to connect with others from a place of authenticity. You will no longer feel the need to seek validation or to hide parts of yourself just to be accepted. This not only transforms your relationships, but also allows you to attract people who are truly aligned with you. When you present yourself to the world as you truly are, the universe responds by bringing you connections and opportunities that resonate with your truth. When you begin to live from your authenticity, you realize something deeply transformative. You no longer need to hold on to the past to define your worth or your identity. Carl Jung believed that much of our suffering comes from identifying with what we have lost rather than with what we can create. This shift in perspective allows you to take control of your life and focus on what is yet to come, rather than remaining trapped in what is already past. The key to overcoming someone who still lingers in your mind is not in forgetting them, but in integrating what they represented into your growth. Every relationship you have had, every experience, whether good or bad, serves a purpose in your life. Jung teaches us that these interactions act as mirrors, reflecting aspects of our own psyche that we have yet to explore. When you understand this, you transform pain into growth, and what once seemed like a loss turns into an opportunity for expansion. A crucial part of this process is recognizing the expectations you place on that person. Often, attachment is not really about the person themselves, but about what they represented in your life. Maybe you believe they were the key to your happiness, your stability, or your sense of belonging. But the truth, as Jung emphasized, is that everything you seek outside of yourself already exists within you. That emptiness you were trying to fill with another person is nothing more than a disconnection from yourself. Reconnected with yourself requires courage and a willingness to look inward. It is a journey that may be uncomfortable, but it is also profoundly liberating. Jung spoke about the importance of facing the shadows we try to avoid, those aspects of our psyche that we would rather ignore. When you confront them, you realize that the shadows are not your enemies. They are teachers, showing you what needs healing and guiding you toward a deeper understanding of who you truly are. At this point, you might ask yourself, how can I face my shadows? One effective way is through self-observation. Pay close attention to your thoughts and emotions, especially those that arise in the presence of that particular person. What recurring themes appear? Are there underlying insecurities or fears? By observing without judgment, you begin to unravel the patterns that have kept you trapped. Another powerful approach is practicing forgiveness, not only toward the other person, but also toward yourself. We often carry guilt for what we did or failed to do in a relationship, punishing ourselves with thoughts like, I should have done more, or if only I had been different. But Jung reminds us that every experience, even mistakes, is part of our path to growth. Forgiving yourself is an act of love and liberation. As you move forward on this journey, it is also essential to establish new emotional boundaries. This does not mean becoming cold or distant, but rather learning to protect your energy. When you allow someone to live in your mind constantly, you are giving away your power. Reclaiming that power requires consciously deciding where to focus your attention and energy. This not only strengthens you, but also prepares you for healthier, more balanced relationships in the future. The process of letting go is not a final destination, but an ongoing journey. Every step you take toward healing brings you closer to your true essence. And along the way, you discover that life has a natural rhythm of giving and receiving, of learning and releasing. When you embrace this flow, you realize that you do not need to cling to anything to be happy. Everything you need to live a fulfilling life is already within you. As you continue to deepen this journey of freedom and self-discovery, it is crucial to remember that the act of letting go is not an act of rejection, but an affirmation of your worth and your right to live in peace. Carl Jung emphasized that personal growth cannot occur while you remain trapped in a constant struggle with the past. Letting go does not mean erasing what was, but rather integrating those experiences as essential chapters of your story, allowing them to strengthen you rather than limit you. A crucial aspect of this process is learning to listen to your intuition. Jung described intuition as a direct connection to the unconscious, an internal guide that is always available to lead you toward what is best for you. However, in the noise of everyday life, this voice is often drowned out. It is necessary to make space to hear it, whether through meditation, contemplation in nature, or simply dedicating silent moments to be with yourself. When you allow yourself to listen, you will notice that your intuition does not pull you toward the past, but propels you forward. It invites you to release the emotional chains that bind you and to trust that what lies ahead will be better. This trust is fundamental because, many times, we cling to what is familiar out of fear of the unknown. But Jung reminds us that true growth only happens when we dare to face the uncertain with courage. The power of this approach lies in its ability to transform not only your perspective, but also your reality. According to Jung, what we experience in the external world is a direct reflection of our internal world. If you are trapped in patterns of pain, frustration, or attachment, those emotions will likely manifest in your relationships and daily experiences. But by working on your inner self, by healing and letting go, you begin to notice a tangible shift in what you attract and how you feel. This change is not just emotional, it is energetic. Every time you choose to free yourself from an attachment, you are making space for something new in your life. It's like clearing weeds from a garden. By removing what no longer serves you, you allow the flowers to grow stronger. This is the essence of synchronicity, one of the most fascinating concepts introduced by Jung. When you are aligned with yourself, the universe responds in unexpected ways, bringing into your life people, opportunities, and experiences that reflect your new vibration. At this stage, you begin to feel a renewed sense of purpose. You no longer define yourself by what you have lost, but by what you are building. This is a powerful moment to set new goals, explore forgotten passions, and reconnect with what truly makes you happy. Allow yourself to dream big, knowing that you are now in a stronger emotional place to pursue those dreams. A crucial aspect of this process is surrounding yourself with a supportive community. Jung believed that while inner work is personal, healthy relationships are fundamental to our well-being. Seek out people who share your values, who inspire you, and who motivate you to keep growing. These connections will not only provide support, but also remind you that you are not alone on this journey. Finally, remember that letting go does not mean you will never think about that person or that relationship again. Memories may resurface from time to time, and that's okay. What matters is how you choose to respond to them. Instead of letting them pull you back into the past, use them as reminders of how far you have come and the strength you have gained. As you continue on this path of self-discovery and liberation, you will realize that every step forward not only brings you closer to your authentic self, but also inspires those around you. Carl Jung said that when one person transforms, everything around them changes. This process is not just a gift to yourself, but also to the people in your life. By facing your shadows, releasing attachments, and embracing your authenticity, you become a living example of what it means to truly live. Imagine for a moment what your life would be like if you stopped carrying the weight of the past. Picture waking up each day with a sense of lightness, with the certainty that you are aligned with your purpose, and with the freedom to create the life you truly desire. This is not an unattainable dream. It is a reality you can build by making the right decisions, one at a time. Letting go of someone who still lingers in your mind is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of an exciting new chapter. By integrating everything we have explored today, it becomes clear that the process of healing and releasing is not just an act of letting go, but also a creation. You are building a life based on your truth, your peace, and your purpose. And on this journey, every decision you make, every step you take, will be a testament to your strength and commitment to yourself. Now, I invite you to reflect on what we have shared. What steps are you willing to take today to begin freeing that person from your mind? What dreams, goals, or projects are you put on hold that you are now ready to pursue? Your transformation begins with decision, and that decision is in your hands. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to be part of this growing community. Share this video with someone who needs it, someone struggling to let go, or who needs to be reminded of their own power. Every time you share content like this, you are helping more people discover these tools and reflections that can change lives. Leave your thoughts in the comments. What part of this message touched your heart? What actions are you willing to take after hearing it? I would love to read your experiences and reflections. Remember, your words could be the encouragement someone else needs to take a step toward their own transformation. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future messages like this. Every interaction matters, not just to help this content reach more people, but to create a community where we can all grow together. Change begins with you, and by sharing your light, you inspire others to find their own. Thank you for being here, for being part of this journey, and for choosing to transform your life from within. See you in the next video. Until then, remember, your power to change your reality is always within you.
Why is it so hard to forget someone who has hurt us? Is it the heart, the mind, or something even deeper that keeps us tied to the past? Perhaps you've tried to move on, filling the emptiness with new experiences, convincing yourself that it no longer matters, and yet somehow that memory lingers like a persistent shadow that refuses to fade. Have you ever wondered why this happens? Today, we are going to explore an answer that goes beyond the superficial, diving deep into the hidden corners of our mind and soul. To truly understand why certain people and experiences remain etched into us, despite our strongest efforts to let them go, we must look beyond what is visible. One of the greatest minds in psychology, Carl Jung, dedicated his life to deciphering the mysteries of the unconscious. His work left us with profound insights into why we cling to certain relationships and why emotional wounds can feel impossible to heal. This video is not just for those who seek to forget, but for those who wish to heal, to better understand themselves, and to reclaim control over their emotions. Imagine this. You're lying in bed, the lights are off, and silence surrounds you. The world outside is quiet, yet your mind refuses to rest. The memories of that relationship, of the laughter, the pain, the words left unsaid, come rushing back as if everything had just happened yesterday. Perhaps you find yourself wondering, why couldn't things have been different? What could I have done to avoid the pain? Why did I allow someone to have so much power over me? This cycle of thoughts is not a coincidence. It is a reflection of something deeper within you, something unresolved that is asking to be understood. And you are not alone in this. Many people have gone through relationships that left deep emotional scars, and despite what society tells us, that time heals all wounds, the truth is far more complex. Time alone does not heal what we carry inside. A wound left unattended does not simply vanish. It lingers beneath the surface, shaping our emotions and decisions in ways we may not even realize. Jung's teachings remind us of a crucial truth. What we do not process consciously remains in our unconscious. It does not disappear. Instead, it hides in what Jung called the shadow, influencing our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors from beneath the surface. The unconscious mind does not forget. Everything we have not faced, everything we have not fully processed, gets stored in this vast and hidden space within our psyche. And it doesn't just stay there. It finds ways to manifest in our daily lives, often without us realizing it. This is why, even when you consciously want to forget that person, something inside you resists. The emotional connection, the shared experiences, and even the pain itself become echoes that continue to reverberate deep within you. At the core of Jungian psychology is a concept that is key to understanding why we struggle to let go: the shadow self. The shadow is the part of our unconscious that holds all the experiences, emotions, and desires that we have repressed or ignored. It is made up of everything we find too painful, too uncomfortable, or too difficult to face directly. And when we go through a painful relationship, especially one that leaves us feeling abandoned, betrayed, or unworthy, these emotions often get buried in our shadow rather than fully processed. But the shadow does not stay silent. Instead, it influences us in subtle but powerful ways, through recurring memories, intrusive thoughts, and even patterns of behavior that keep us stuck in cycles of pain. This is why some people find themselves drawn to similar toxic relationships over and over again. It is not mere coincidence. It is the unconscious mind recreating past wounds, seeking resolution, pushing us towards situations that mirror what we have not yet healed. According to Carl Jung, the shadow is that hidden part of ourselves that we often choose to ignore or suppress. It encompasses all the aspects of our personality that we deem unacceptable, uncomfortable, or unworthy: our deepest fears, insecurities, unfulfilled desires, and unresolved wounds. These are the fragments of ourselves that we push into the unconscious because they feel too painful or too difficult to confront. However, the shadow does not simply disappear. Instead, it manifests in our interactions with others, particularly in relationships that are intense, emotionally charged, or conflict-ridden. Jung suggested that what we reject in ourselves often gets projected onto those around us. In other words, when we feel deeply hurt by someone, it is not always just about what they did or said. More often than not, the real pain stems from what they revealed about us, about the parts of ourselves we have yet to acknowledge. Imagine, for instance, that the person who hurt you represented something you fear within yourself. Perhaps their actions triggered your deep-seated fear of abandonment, exposing a desperate need for companionship that you have long refused to recognize. Or maybe their rejection did not just wound you in the present moment, but rather reopened an old emotional scar, one that you have carried since childhood, yet never fully healed. The shadow acts like a mirror, reflecting back to us the aspects of our psyche that we have buried in the depths of our subconscious. When someone unknowingly triggers this reflection, the intensity can be overwhelming. It is as if we are being forced to confront a version of ourselves that we would rather not see. This is why letting go of pain becomes such a difficult process. The suffering is not solely tied to the other person. It is intricately linked to what they have unearthed within us. So, I ask you, what do you think that relationship revealed about you? What part of yourself have you yet to accept? Reflecting on these questions is not easy, but it is the first essential step toward true healing. Jung famously stated that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This means that as long as we avoid confronting the emotions, wounds, and projections that emerge from our relationships, we will remain trapped in the same repetitive cycles. But there is hope, because once we bring our shadows into the light, not only can we release the pain, but we can also learn from it. This leads to an even deeper question. Why do we seem to repeat the same stories in our relationships, especially the painful ones? Jung provides us with a fascinating answer. Our psyche is shaped by archetypes, the universal patterns that reside within the collective unconscious. These archetypes function like invisible guides, influencing our emotions, thoughts, and most significantly, the way we navigate our relationships. In harmful or toxic relationships, certain archetypes tend to emerge in predictable ways. One of the most common is the savior, a person who feels an overwhelming need to rescue or fix others. At first glance, this role might seem noble or selfless, but beneath the surface, it often masks a deep insecurity, the need to feel needed in order to validate one's own existence. On the other side of this dynamic, we find the victim, someone who identifies with suffering and helplessness, believing that their well-being is dependent on others. This archetype naturally attracts the savior, leading to a relationship built on mutual dependency. Over time, however, this dynamic becomes unsustainable. Then, lurking in the shadows, there is the villain. This figure arises when unhealed wounds manifest as aggression, control, or manipulation. Often, those who play the role of the villain have been wounded themselves, and they perpetuate cycles of pain as a form of self-protection. These archetypes do not exist in isolation. They interact, fuel each other, and create complex emotional patterns. For example, a person who identifies as the savior may initially feel fulfilled by helping someone they see as the victim. But as time goes on, they may begin to feel drained, unappreciated, or taken advantage of. This resentment can eventually transform them into the villain in the eyes of the victim, leading to a cycle of blame, hurt, and disillusionment. This destructive loop is more common than we realize. But the real question is, why do we fall into these patterns time and time again? Carl Jung explained that unconsciously we are drawn to people who reflect our deepest wounds or patterns we have inherited from our families. If you experienced rejection during childhood, you might find yourself attracted to emotionally distant individuals. This is not a coincidence. Rather, it is as if your psyche is trying to recreate the scenario in which the original wound occurred, hoping to resolve it. Imagine it like this. A person who grew up feeling that they had to earn their parents' love might seek a romantic partner who is cold or indifferent, believing that if they can finally win their affection, they will heal that old wound. But instead of finding comfort, they fall into an endless cycle of rejection and despair, reinforcing the very pain they wish to escape. The key to breaking these patterns lies in making the unconscious conscious. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This means that if we do not bring awareness to the forces shaping our relationships, we will continue to repeat the same painful patterns, believing them to be inevitable, rather than choices we can change. One of the most powerful ways to free ourselves is by identifying the archetypes that influence our relationships. Archetypes are deep, universal patterns of behavior and emotion that operate within our psyche. Are you playing the role of the savior, always trying to fix and rescue others? Or perhaps you see yourself as the victim, constantly feeling powerless in your relationships. Maybe you even identify with the villain, pushing people away before they can hurt you. Take a moment to reflect. What roles have you unconsciously played in your past relationships? What patterns seem to repeat over and over again? Answering these questions is the first step to unraveling the hidden forces shaping your life. By bringing these patterns into the light, you begin the journey of breaking the cycle. Because in the end, understanding your archetypes doesn't just free you from toxic relationships, it allows you to build healthier, more authentic, and deeply fulfilling connections. Forgiveness is not about time. It is about internal transformation. We often believe that simply waiting will make pain fade away. But Jung teaches us that true healing requires us to confront our shadow. The shadow is the hidden part of our psyche that holds the emotions, fears, and wounds we try to avoid. But how do we face it? How do we truly heal from a painful relationship? Here, I will guide you through a step-by-step process to free yourself from the weight of a past relationship and transform pain into a tool for growth. The first step is to recognize the emotions that this person still triggers in you. Take a moment to reflect. When you think about them, what do you feel? Is it anger, sadness, guilt, or perhaps a confusing mix of emotions? Instead of suppressing these feelings, allow yourself to fully acknowledge them. One effective way to do this is by writing in a journal or sitting in a quiet space for deep reflection. Ask yourself, where is this feeling really coming from? What part of my past, my insecurities, or my unmet expectations is being reflected here? For example, if you feel anger, it may not only be directed at the other person, but also at yourself, for allowing certain things to happen. If you feel guilt, it might be rooted in a deep fear of not being good enough. These emotions are not random. They are windows into your shadow. Observing them without judgment is the first step in dissolving their power over you. A powerful exercise is to visualize the person standing in front of you, not as an enemy, but as a mirror. Ask yourself, what is this relationship revealing about me? What do I need to accept or heal within myself to truly let go of this pain? At first, this may feel uncomfortable, even painful, but it is also deeply transformative. Jung believed that every painful experience holds the potential to teach us something essential about ourselves. The relationships that mark us the most, whether through love or suffering, are opportunities to uncover hidden patterns that need to change and wounds that are ready to heal. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" shift your perspective and ask, "What can I learn from this?" For instance, if a relationship made you feel invisible or unappreciated, perhaps it is a sign that you need to work on your self-worth and establish stronger boundaries. If it made you feel emotionally dependent, it might be an opportunity to develop your autonomy and strengthen your sense of self. Reframing pain as a lesson empowers you. It shifts you from feeling like a victim of your circumstances to becoming the creator of your own healing. In the end, to forget is not to erase, but to reconnect with yourself in a way that makes the past lose its power over you. Carl Jung described this process as individuation, the journey toward emotional awareness and the integration of all aspects of our psyche. It is a path of self-discovery that requires us to embrace both our light and our shadow, acknowledging every hidden corner of our being. By doing so, we cultivate a deeper, more solid connection with ourself, that complete and authentic version of who we truly are beneath the layers of conditioning and fear. Individuation demands commitment and courage. It is not an instant transformation, but rather a gradual unfolding of self-awareness. Each small step matters. You can begin by carving out time for self-reflection, exploring your passions, and nurturing the aspects of your life that you may have neglected. Engage in activities that nourish your soul, whether it's meditation, painting, writing, or simply reconnecting with nature. These practices do more than just provide temporary relief. They initiate a profound healing process. In doing so, you come to a life-changing realization. Peace does not come from external validation or circumstances. It emerges from within. As Jung wisely stated, "He who looks outside dreams, but he who looks inside awakens." This is your moment of awakening. By turning inward, you do not merely seek answers. You rediscover yourself. You reconnect with an inner strength that has always been there, waiting to be acknowledged. So I ask you, what are you willing to do to embark on this journey toward your true self? Because forgetting is not an end. It is a beginning. It marks the start of a path toward a fuller, more authentic life, one in which you take center stage, not the wounds of the past. To rewrite the past does not mean changing what happened. Instead, it means transforming how we interpret it. The power that a painful experience holds over us is often not in the events themselves, but in the narrative we have built around them. The stories we repeat in our minds, the ones where pain, guilt, or frustration take center stage, can become emotional prisons, trapping us in suffering long after the events have passed. But here's the truth. You are not your past. You are not the sum of your wounds. You have the power to reshape your story, to extract wisdom from your struggles, and to reclaim your personal narrative. The moment you choose to reinterpret your past through a lens of strength rather than victimhood, you take back control. You become the architect of your own transformation. So, what will you choose? Will you continue to be defined by the echoes of yesterday, or will you step into the power of your own healing? Carl Jung invites us to take a different approach, to transform our narrative into a bridge toward growth and self-discovery. Think of your past as if it were a book. For a long time, you have been rereading the same chapter, one marked by wounds, regrets, or reproaches. However, that chapter is not the entirety of your story. It is merely a single part of a book that you are still writing. So, what would happen if you chose to take the pen into your own hands and continue writing from a new perspective? Instead of focusing on what you lost or the pain you endured, you could shift your attention to what you learned, the strength you uncovered within yourself as you overcame that suffering. One of the most transformative exercises for this process is visualization. Close your eyes and picture that person standing in front of you. But this time, do not see them as an enemy, nor even as someone who still causes you pain. Instead, imagine them as a fading image, one whose presence is gradually losing its intensity. Visualize their figure dissolving, like a cloud dispersing into the vast sky. Now, in the empty space that remains, plant a seed. That seed symbolizes your future. It is a reminder that you have the power to grow, to flourish beyond what you have lived through. Watch as that seed takes root and begins to sprout, transforming into a strong, vibrant tree, full of life. Every day, that tree stands as a testament to your ability to move forward, to become wiser and more resilient. Rewriting our personal narrative does not mean diminishing the pain we have endured. Instead, it means redefining its significance. Rather than viewing that chapter as something that defines your entire existence, you can choose to see it as the moment that set your transformation in motion. Perhaps that relationship taught you about your boundaries, about what you truly deserve, or about your remarkable capacity to endure and overcome hardship. When you reframe your past in this way, its weight begins to lessen. That experience no longer remains an open wound, but instead becomes a scar, one that tells a story of resilience. To forget, then, is not to erase what happened, but to release the emotional burden attached to it. It is allowing the past to rest where it belongs, as a chapter in your journey that helped shape who you are today. By letting go, you create space for new beginnings, for healthier relationships, and for a deeper, more authentic connection with yourself. It is not about ignoring your past, but about choosing how you want to remember it. Because in the end, you hold the power to decide what place that experience will have in your life. This is your moment of transformation, your opportunity to write a new chapter, one where pain no longer defines you, but instead serves as the foundation for something much greater. So, I ask you, what story do you want to tell about your life from this moment forward? Because in the end, remembering is not the problem. What truly matters is how you choose to remember, and most importantly, how you decide to move on. Are you ready to close that chapter and begin writing a narrative that is freer, more empowering, and truly your own? Forgetting someone who has hurt us is not merely a matter of time. It is a journey of deep self-understanding and healing. As we have explored, the path to releasing that weight begins the moment we dare to look inward, to confront our shadows, to reinterpret our past, and to construct a narrative that liberates us, rather than keeping us trapped. It is not about erasing what we have lived through, but about transforming it, turning it into a pillar of strength that reinforces our identity and propels us forward. Now, I invite you to reflect. What part of your own shadow do you recognize in that relationship that still wounds you? What unprocessed emotions or recurring patterns is it revealing to you? Take a moment to not only recognize what has happened, but also to reflect on what you can learn from it. Every experience, whether painful or uplifting, carries within it a lesson, A hidden message that, if uncovered, has the power to transform your perspective and strengthen your soul. If you feel comfortable, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your story, your experience, could serve as a beacon of hope for someone else who is going through something similar. Never underestimate the impact that your words and reflections can have on others. Sometimes the wisdom gained through hardship is exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their own way forward. Remember, we are all walking this path of self-discovery and healing together. It may feel like the pain you carry today is eternal, as if it will never fade, as if the weight of it will always be there, pressing against your chest. But if you dare to look inward, if you take the time to truly explore the depths of your own being, you will find the key to letting go. You will realize that within you lies an infinite power, the power to heal, to rise, and to emerge stronger than before. Every step you take towards self-awareness, every moment of introspection, and every small decision to release what no longer serves you is a step toward a more authentic and fulfilling life. Healing is not about forgetting. It is about transforming. It is about reshaping your pain into wisdom and using it as fuel for your personal evolution. Forgetting is not the end. Rather, it is the beginning of a new path, a journey of transformation that leads to clarity, growth, and an unshakable sense of inner peace. If these words have resonated with you, I encourage you to take action today. Don't let this be just another fleeting moment of reflection. Make it the beginning of something greater. Take a few minutes to write down your thoughts. Visualize the life you want to create, and start laying the foundation for a future filled with endless possibilities. Every great transformation begins with a single step, and that step starts within you. And if this video has brought you any value, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear these words today. Together, we can create a space where personal growth, emotional healing, and self-discovery take center stage, a space where we uplift and support one another in our journeys toward wholeness. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of the unconscious, into the profound understanding of what it truly means to let go, to heal, and to reclaim your power. Always remember, every step forward counts, no matter how small. You are never alone on this path. I'll see you in the next video, where we will continue exploring the mysteries of the mind and uncovering the keys to living a more conscious, intentional, and meaningful life. Until then, keep growing, keep discovering, and never stop embracing the extraordinary power that lies within you.